sweat and splinters. Forest elders breathe their last. I'll bring them for your supper.
Hey y'all, Kelly Moody here. Welcome to the Ground Shots podcast, a podcast that explores our relationship to ecology through conversations and storytelling. I'm back here in Paonia, Colorado, where I'm recording this late and in a studio where I rent space, and I'm about to get on the Green River for 10 days. And I'm trying to get this episode out for you guys to listen to before I get out there off-grid again. I have been doing a lot of time off the internet and off social media for chunks this winter and this past year in general. I haven't done a lot of sharing on the podcast that's like where I'm at, what I'm doing as much as I used to. And I've been kind of doing that on purpose, but I will share that I've been traveling in the Southwest this winter after Mexico, and a lot of the places I usually go and find respite, and hanging with friends that I find respite with, and it's been a lot of things. It's been good. It's been a reminder of what's important. And, going back to places year after year in different capacities, you build layers of feeling and soma in those places. And certainly my winter springs, I have some places that I have repeated time spent, and it's really nice to have that familiarity. And so I've just been through a period of that, even though it's always a little different every year. And yeah, I just came back to Paonia with a whirlwind snowstorm. Just a little bit jarring after being in like 90-degree Fahrenheit temps for a second there in the Sonoran Desert where I was just now. But yeah, this episode of the podcast was recorded the day before my friend Mandalin, who was traveling with me in Mexico, and I left to come back to the States. And we recorded with Samuel, who's been on the podcast the last episode and many other times, in the gallery that they built, the newer gallery they built on his farm in Teotitlan de Valle in Oaxaca, Mexico. And we also did a video recording of this episode, and I'm working on trying to get it on YouTube right now. It's new for me to do video recordings, and so I'm trying to figure out the best, just uploading and downloading and figuring out my program and how to best do that and where to find the, piece when I download it. So if it doesn't get put out along with this episode, I will keep working on trying to get that video out, because it's really funny and kind of cool to see us all sitting together in that gallery, looking at each other and looking at the camera and being just goofy together. So yeah, you can have more intimacy there with us through the video when it does come out, which again might be now or might be later, depending on what I have time to do before we get on this Green River trip. And yeah, I'm going out with Nikki Hill, who's been on the podcast a few times, and Mandalin, who is in this episode, and a few other friends, and we're going out to look at plants. And we may record something out there for the podcast. We may to do a little photo work, but we're mainly going out to do some renegade research together, looking at plants and geology and conjuring ideas about this landscape here in the Southwest, the story of the Green River, which is a main vein of the Colorado River. If you guys listened to the Colorado River episode we did, We All Eat the Colorado River, you know that it's quite a important, impactful watershed that affects people even outside of that watershed in large ways. It affects so many things, and the Green River is a very popular part of the Colorado River watershed that a lot of people raft recreationally. It's a big economic region for that, and there's a lot going on there. And so we're going to go on a section that is pretty chill to raft on, and take the time to stop and explore and look for what's flowering right now. We're hoping to see some of the culturally significant plants that me and peers on the podcast have been interested in for many years now. So super excited about that. Just trying to get all my ducks in a row here. Before getting this episode out. I don't want it to sit too long in the ethers, as some of my episodes can do in the busyness of my life before putting it out. So here we are. Before we get to this episode, a few announcements. I just posted some jewelry and sheepskins for sale on my website. This is one way I can support myself and pay my bills. I just had to replace the leaf springs on my truck in addition to tons of other things that keep breaking on my truck. So this is one of the things that helps me get around and make all these things happen, and makes these conversations work. And so yeah, I just did that post up. I just listed all those things for sale and did some posts about it on Instagram and Facebook and other platforms where I share these things. And there's definitely some stuff that's sold, but if you guys are listening as this comes out, I'm sure there will be a few things still available. So go check that out at upsedgeandsalt.com, also where this podcast lives currently, and see what is there that you could take home for yourself that I made myself or tanned myself. Some other things going on. I have a buckskin tanning class happening here in Paonia, Colorado, April 18th through 20th. There are still 2 spots left for that class. There are a few people saying they're going to sign up, but we still have 2 spots left as I record this. And so if you are interested in taking that class with me, learning to do buckskin, deerskin, groundwork, who I've taught my ecology classes through, is hosting it. layinggroundwork.org is where you can go to find the class to sign up. And while we're on that, I also am doing one ecology course this spring through them. You can also find that at layinggroundwork.org. It's a program I've done the past few springs in this region, studying all these intersectional layers of place, stories, history, landscape awareness and journaling, but also botany basics, plant families, wild tending basics, and really looking at deeper layers of fire, water, and disturbance together on the Grand Mesa here in Western Colorado. So check that out, and also we'll have a small group for that as well. And early signups are best for us because that helps us plan for the classes. And we do it out in the field, but we car camp, so you don't have to worry about being ready to hike backpacking out or anything. But we do day hikes at 7,000 feet or so. So just know that. Would love to have you out there. It's been really fun to teach that every year. And this is a location that we can go check out, where we've spent time the past few years and kind of see the impact that we've had. You can come with me and you can actually see some of the impact that we've had over the past few years being in study of these places. And also a couple more announcements. I'm doing a hydrosol making class here in Paonia, Colorado, April 23rd with Ren of Gnome Collective, who's been on the podcast before. You might have listened to her a few years ago. We recorded in Asheville, North Carolina. We're going to teach together. She's coming from my buckskin class, taking it, and then we're going to teach together a few days after that here at the studio, Paonia Makerspace. You can sign up for that class on my website. Sliding scale. You get to take home some juniper hydrosol with you, and we'll explain how to do it. We'll be doing it all together, live demonstration, and we also will be talking a little bit about juniper ethnobotany and harvesting basics, and I would love to have you. And we're going to do a little open house after that here. If you're in the region and you want to pop in, we're going to sell some tinctures, medicines, have some other goods available, and Ren's going to have some of her elixir bar stuff available too, and we're going to have a good time, open it up for the public. Email me, kelly@ofsedgeandsalt.com if you have any questions about that, but you can sign up on my website. And, of course, pop by on that day from 6 to 8 after the class. And we'll leave it at that for, like, immediate class announcements and, like, offering announcements coming up in our current. And I'll share a couple ways you can support the podcast, which really help. Groundshots.substack.com. Subscribe there as a paid subscriber. That really helps support this work. And storytelling, my personal, vulnerable, research-based writing. It's a lot of things. You know, I do a lot of different styles and, like, explorations, but I really love sharing there. And you can also donate on Venmo or PayPal. Kelly-Moody-6 is the Venmo. We also still have the fundraiser for the Ground Shots podcast that I started on my birthday. And the link for that is on my website, on my Instagram, and on show notes for different episodes, most recently of the podcast, and help support the overhead of the podcast for the year. You can support by buying seeds from Vibrant Earth Seeds, which is currently a great time to buy seeds to start planting. And if you use Ground Shots 10 at checkout, we get a tiny bit of kickback and you get a little bit of a discount. So Vibrant Earth Seeds is a seed company based out of the Four Corners region, the Southwest. Friends of mine own it, and buying seeds through them and using that code help both of us out. And I think we'll leave it at that. We're going to go ahead and get to this episode. If you have any questions about any offerings with Ground Shots coming up, feel free to email me, kelly@ofsedgeandsalt.com. I try my best to email people back. Sometimes it takes me a second, but I will eventually message you back. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this last episode we did in Mexico before coming back here to the States. And a lot of ripe stuff in the conversation in this 3-way time that we recorded, and I hope you get something out of it. All right, y'all, happy listening. We'll just watch. Fine. And we'll look at the time. 5:15.
We'll aim for an hour. See how it goes.
Okay.
Are we online?
Well, I'm recording it, but I can always edit it. I just pressed it because I've never done it this way.
Okay,
on the video,
friends.
so
this is last day in Oaxaca.
I know what. No.
Cheers to that.
I'm not ready.
Not ready at all.
I feel like I just got started. I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to go and research some of these really cool plants we've been looking at. Like, I want to go find the tree with the cotton puffs.
Yeah.
Like, figure it out.
Who are you, milkweed
And
cousin?
the one that's in the yerba de cacao.
Oh, it smells so good.
That isn't actually cacao. And, like, I just...
Funibrea.
I want...
Cunibrea frunebris.
And the one with the red flowers that you said is edible or that people don't eat anymore. And I'm going to go look for more oak trees, and I don't know.
Well, for this, for that, Chisbeo.
Chisbeo. Ah. Whoa.
Wow.
What is in this one?
Rose petals.
Oh.
Rose? Like you put the rose in?
Them.
No, I didn't.
Someone else did?
Yeah. My brother got it on his trip to Yerba del Agua.
Wow. That's really good.
It's really good. Like
Really
dessert
floral.
wine, floral.
And you keep this one on your mom's altar for special occasions?
Yes.
Or to give her some
Mm-hmm.
occasionally?
Well, all the mezcal sits on the altar.
Yeah.
So it's blessed. It's not just
Yeah.
any drink.
Yeah.
It's our spiritual drink.
Yeah. So good. Rose. Oh.
Should we start playing some music?
Sure.
It's so different
No
doing
pressure.
this with the video.
It is.
I know.
Hi. We're real people.
You doing the rattle?
Rattle.
Let's just do like a minute or two.
Okay.
Just to ease.
Are you gonna play the flute too?
Yeah, I'm just gonna open with the conch. See how that sounds. You could edit later.
Okay.
Warning: if you have dogs at home, sensible sound people. Sorry, but traditionally we use the conch to open our ceremonies. We're overlooking our sacred mountain, and just to acknowledge our ancestors, the land here, and the conch. It's a symbol, sacred geometry that connects the clouds, the earth, and the ocean. So, just with that, let's see if it works. I'm still new. That's gonna be loud.
That's fine.
Okay.
We warned people.
So, let's just play from our hearts. Just be playful kids who like music, and we're just sharing something
Okay.
with people. Other people that also poop and smile.
Totally unplanned. Improv.
Yeah.
We practiced that all week.
Right? Really?
No.
Yeah, we did.
You guys
We
practiced
did a
last-
little bit. We did have a little prep practice last week or so, or 3. Oh, where's time going?
Yeah. You guys, I never saw you guys play together.
Once.
Or maybe I did. I just don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. They're in different keys, so finding the right
Yeah.
Place.
symbiosis between them. Yeah.
It sounded good. Yeah.
I'm glad you're thinking of that because I'm not. These are really nice flutes. They were made by my friend Guillermo. Quetzalcoatl. Yeah, his work is really well made.
Yeah.
They have such a good
We
sound.
barter for that.
Yeah.
The
They have
double.
like moonstone
barrel.
and I don't know what this is.
Moonstone and
I don't know what that is
Obsidian?
either. I think it is obsidian. It looks like it.
well, here we are.
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun to invite my friend Mandalin, who I've been traveling with, to just talk with us too, because we've been having lots of conversations the past few weeks, all 3 of us. So I thought, well, let's just all chat candidly, being recorded. I know you haven't done this before with me, but Samuel has. Although we all are acting all shy right now. This is on video.
I'll do that.
And I don't have a full plan for this, but yeah, we've been thinking about lots of things.
Yeah.
A little cross-pollination
Of ideas.
moments and things. Yeah, you come from a lot of stories and perspectives too, and Samuel and me, so here we are. We're about to go back to the U.S. tomorrow, so no. But yeah, it's what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's a bittersweet leaving and coming into a new place, and reflecting with you this morning over our jugo verdes in the market and scheming up when we'll come back. It gave me a little sense of peace and like it's okay to say goodbye right now. Accept the change.
Yeah.
We'll miss you.
Yeah, I'll miss you guys too. And it makes me think, really, what is it that really turns on people, there is even memes about it, like one trip to Mexico and like your life is reset. Or people that come here and fall, so much in love with the place and, they end up moving here.
Yeah.
There's definitely something. Of course, in the land, especially around here. Very biodiverse land. Also in the culture, the diverse culture, the foods, the musics. But beyond that, there is something in Mexico, and you're speaking with Caminante, what he was saying that in the 60s or 70s when he came here, this was like Indian country, everybody was living.
Everyone was Indian.
Living the natural way, even like people in the north of Mexico who are more, Spanish descendants. I mean, they're also mixed. We're all mixed, but, they come across more like that. But even then, we're like ranching or like, growing their own food, and I'm sure like tanning their hides, making beautiful saddles, and not too long ago, actually, just right after the Mexican Revolution, I think in the 40s, something like 70 or 60% of all Mexicans still spoke their native language.
Wow.
Not too long ago.
Wow.
So where I'm going with this, there's something here, and what also, in the perspectives of this guy, the Castaneda, the teachings of Don Juan, like the way we live life, it's more connected to the Nahual, to that, just left side, what we call the left side of our being, which would be the right side of your brain, I think, the way people understand it in the West. So more, more organic, more feminine, more spontaneous, more, more as a celebration, living life, as a celebration, as a party, as an offering, as sacred. That's what I've been reflecting on as you're living.
It's interesting because I've been sitting with a lot of the we both have been travelers for a long time, and you've traveled a lot more internationally than me, but every place has its complexity, and so we both have traveled in the States a ton and abroad, you more abroad. And I'm treating every place as this you come in and you kind of are observing all the layers and taking it in, and coming with preconceptions, but also coming with openness, And this place, like so many, has its complexities. This place, what is place? This place, this village, but this state, this country, this bioregion, this continent, And I've been kind of just taking in and trying to sift through and understand how it all it's like a feeling state, I'm an intellectual person. We've had lots of intellectual conversations during this time, but what is that? There's someone that Samuel just mentioned, Camiente, that's how you say, I keep forgetting how to say his name. He's like an elder in this area that is, we went and saw him last night. So we're kind of sitting with some of his words and not quite sure it's profound words that this human here spoke to us, and you get to hang out with him more regularly. But like, yes, just so many things he said that I'm like now taking in to reflect on this time and my greater purpose in life to be on this planet in general, like, because there's often this like, it's this or that. You either live intact culture or you don't, or you live, you're either liberal or you're conservative, or you're either indigenous or you're not. Like, you're either connected or you're not connected. Like, what is there, where's there C and D and E? Like, where is there some other narrative or way we can see these things? And anyways, our conversation last night has blown my brain into the universe beyond, and we haven't even really talked about it and we haven't told you what we talked about, but I'm just like, I'm so glad for it. You know,
we could use this opportunity now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but I think the common denominator of like, we're just dirt for rock woman, he kept saying, you know. Or what's another name for this? Do you remember this being that he kept mentioning? The greater, like, common thread of it all was, like, everything is being, like, destroyed and recreated over and over. Like, there's so many...
Well, like, life and death, you know, it's happening all at once. You know, we start to die since the moment we're born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cells dying and regenerating consistently every day, every moment.
And from what I see, you know, like, in our patterns and weavings, we play a lot with this duality, but we create a third state from which, you know, you go beyond that duality and you take another perspective on these complementary opposites that exist.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, he was speaking to kind of like the effect that he's seen of modernity is a word, I guess, on this culture. And of course, people come here, though, from the outside seeking to experience what they think is like a more intact, authentic, connected culture, which I feel is real, you know, to a point. And also, there's hardly any place in the world that isn't affected by globalization in this sense of like, he didn't even call it capitalism. He's like, it's not capitalism. It's this other thing. It's like this...
Yeah, in the sense that it's mostly debt, you know, it's not capital, you know, like all these economies are funded by debt.
Debt, yeah.
Yeah, and that's...
invisible debt.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's really what's fueling, you know, the superpowers of the world right now.
Yeah.
You know, they're just writing off debt and just using their military power to intimidate all the other nations, and it's exactly what Trump is doing right now. And
like the culture being erased by this sort of something I used to call McDonaldization of the world. There's some other writers who've said that. It's not something I made up, but like McDonaldization, like watering down. And something he said, I mean, this is an elder who was sort of considered being on the podcast, but he's maybe just not there right now with it, but maybe one day. But he said something about that we're all just fools, you know, and convincing each other to be fools, worshiping this thing that we will never get, and then we're just like, we forget what happened 20 years ago and we just do it all over again. You know, the chasing an emptiness, and that like meme, that kind of theme being spread all over the world, like, what is that? So as we move about in the world, we're kind of like, I mean, we're aware of this and like we're pushing against it. Like, I think anyone can be pushing against it, whether you're indigenous or you've been pulled from your indigeneity longer ago, you know. How do we just be in the world? So coming here, there's like an interesting sense of like, yeah, there's plastic, there's crime you've mentioned many times. Oh, welcome to Mexico. Like here, lots of things happen that don't happen other places, or this is like also part of this culture. And also there's just like this insane beauty and like vibrancy and like laughter and joy and like rawness intermingled with like these other layers, and that I don't think any place is like separate from that at this point, right? Like
there's not a place in the world that's separate from it. I've been feeling like a lot of that vibrancy and this like joyous experience that we see as from the outside, and that I see like within you and your family and the community when we're going around, stems from like a deep place of connection with each other. People feel, at least from an outsider's perspective, less isolated here. Everyone's going to the market in the morning, having their breakfast with each other, buying their fruits and vegetables for the day, their meat, their pan, their bread, and having this daily rhythm of connection, starting the day with that. And I feel like that's such a good foundation for having resiliency in this changing world, to feel not so isolated and alone. And I think that might be like something that keeps like me and you, Kelly, moving forward as like travelers in a way. At least for me, it feels like I want to connect with my friends who are abroad and in all of these separate places, and feel that deeply every day. And when I don't, it feels isolating, and I feel like that's kind of intentional in this American culture that we come from. It's like this, it feels like hyper independence and hyper individuality, whereas like here I'm seeing like houses full of intergenerational relationships and children growing up with their grandparents and having this creative connection in the daily life. And it's definitely really inspiring and something I hope to create more in my life as I get older and bring that value with me.
Well, that's something special about our community here, because even though, as people, we have moved as well, back and forth, and we've intermingled also with other peoples, and this is what also native scholars are beginning to say, like the Toltecs, the Mayans, they weren't an ethnicity. They were a culture, that you embrace certain values, a language, a way of living, and a way of organizing, your community and being part of it. But, the thing is that, we've been stewarding this land probably since like the last ice age, like 20,000 years ago. We are told stories of when the valleys were lakes, and that was like roughly 20,000 years ago. And we've been stewarding these lands that you see around as a community. And we've gone through a lot to defend this land from invaders, from colonization, from the revolt of the Mexican Revolution, the craziness, the encroaching, industrialization, and the globalization, and we're adapting, we're somehow adapting, but we're being impacted, like what Caminante was saying from his outside perspective. He's like, everybody was so much healthier then. It appeared like people in their 60s and 70s, they were still going to the forest, gathering firewoods, plowing the lands. And now here in our village, because we've also become sedentary, first 500 years ago when the Spanish built this town and brought us to live close together, like, in Spain. This is not traditional for us.
To be clustered.
This is more like how, we've hybridized our culture. And fine, this is how it works now. Like, we have electricity wires and sewage systems, but there is also ways, to live in harmony with, and we're, like, the youth are relearning. We're just overseeing a permaculture farm over there, and they have compost toilets and they grow their own food. And everybody, the young people are also looking at different ways of doing things. But we have the effects of of all these global effects, like fast foods that are everywhere in the little shops. Where you go, what you see is just packed fast foods, canned milk, beer, everything industrialized,
sugar,
readily available, at same as the U.S., and it's probably because we, like my grandfather went to the U.S., as one of the first immigrants who went there to work in Texas to pick up cotton. So we've been going back and forth too, like since the ancient migrations to the latest ones, we remember. And that's kind of what Caminante was saying, like we remember the stories, we like as peoples, like in our oral tradition, we, even though the stories like change, evolve, but like they are purposeful for the time, we have stories of prophecies that are coming true, with climate change, with the pandemic, all of that was foretold. And then that's the thing that he was, like Caminante was saying, like literally, he was saying, like, white people, European, like they've forgotten those stories, they've forgotten who they are, their lineage. And he's also acknowledging that they were also traumatized. They had a history of violence and genocide on their own people, that started with the Industrial Revolution. So here we fought a lot to maintain and protect our community. And I think apart from the land, the second most valuable thing that we inherited is our community. And we have a very refined community structure, which now is in the legal world, it's referred to as the internal norms of peoples. It used to be called usos y costumbres. But now it's acknowledged in the Constitution that, this internal government political system is as valid as the federal Constitution. And so, we go to the market because before we had fridges, we used to go to the farmer's market every morning and buy fresh produce, fresh lettuce, fresh cheese, freshly baked bread. You buy what you need, for the day or two maximum. Then the next day you go to market and you see each other, and we don't have newspapers because we see each other, we're telling the stories, like, this person is ill, or like, you find out everything in a market. And for us, markets are sacred places. And it's, marking the rhythm of our community.
Yeah. I think something we talked about with Damien a little bit too, and you've spent time in the States, we live in the States, and you've spent time in more indigenous communities in the States than I have, but like the difference in like how, we don't have a full picture because we don't live in those spaces all the time, but like how different it is. You are on the literal land that your like ancestors have been tending for a super long time and like haven't been moved from here. Imagine like if everyone here was forced to leave and go hundreds of miles away, like how completely disorienting that would be for generations, right? Like, and traumatizing. And like how can you continue to hold what is genetically like melted into you from the land? Like it's not something you really put words on, but like being in engagement, even if that engagement changes over time, from like being in the mountains to being here in the valley to doing polycultures and like tending with fire and all these things, to then being like we're growing agave and rose. Like despite all of that, the land is like becomes a part of our body's genetics, right? Like how different of an experience it is, even if it's changing, even if some things are forgotten, some of the songs, but then some of the stories are not, like the patterns still remain imprinted in the rugs, but also in the body. And so like how different of an experience it is to be in a place that's always changing like everywhere else, but it's like people's bodies are more made up of this place in a way that so much in our world people are violently forced to disconnect from that continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's something there that's just felt even by people who visit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even if it's got all these other layers to it, like the modern foods and, yeah, things that are lost as well. Like
Mhm.
being in this land, yeah, it seems like it's important. Yeah.
It's the core. Yeah, I was thinking about that connection and holding on to what is sacred to you, what is the purpose of life. I was thinking about when we first got here, your dad, Mario, was showing us the rug he was weaving with the interconnected hand pattern and how that is the symbol that's like, I forget how long he said that specific weave has been passed down for generations and generations, and it just made me think of people holding on to each other, working together, coming into one another.
Creating community.
Yeah, and I thought that was really powerful the way he expressed that.
Yeah. And it's not easy. I mean, also, let's not romanticize it.
Yeah.
I've been telling you about our legal land issues with neighbors, and, even family issues become more intense,
Totally.
And
You can't run away.
I hear a lot, but this is what happens in the US, from the stories I hear, people run away.
Yeah.
From their problems.
And it's like culturally enforced. You're like 18 or like you need to go away. Like that's the mentality.
Go to the city. I felt like that was encouraged.
And
go
here,
get a real
it's
job.
like,
Get out of this town. But then wait, are you coming back? Well,
come back
just
for
kind of told me
Christmas
to leave.
and Thanksgiving and all the other holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember we talked about ritual and ceremony, right? That was a good conversation.
Last
too.
night?
Yeah, last night. Do you wanna dwell in it a little bit?
I mean, I don't even know how to begin to speak to what Camiante was saying about it, but he's brutally honest in a way that we're refreshing to hear. Yeah, some people in the podcast audience might know we've mentioned Phoenicia Medrano here and there over the years, but a couple times when you've met Phoenicia too, and before she passed away, but a couple times we were both looking at each other like, oh my God, is Phoenicia being reborn right now in a different body?
No, they're friends. They know each other.
They didn't.
In
We
another
still are kind of
parallel reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Camiante was kind of had a critical lens on ceremony as we define it and know it today, and in all the different ways that people wield ceremony. That it's an empty symbol and shell of
Well, especially now, I would say, and I wanted to stress that out because, cacao ceremony, it's such a commodified, it's the most commodified ceremony. I mean, I don't know, it feels like, and because cacao is sacred to us,
The peyote ceremony.
Peyote and
All of it.
mushrooms, all of it.
Ayahuasca, yoga,
Yeah.
peyote, cacao.
But somehow this is going back, and even I often am being interested in ancestral skills and stuff too. It's not about going back. It's about how do we be good soil for the future composting in a way, basically, the Camiante kept saying last night. But the ceremonies that kind of are symbolic shells that keep us stuck in the past without thinking well, our purpose embodies here, and ceremonies need to morph to be serving what our bodies become for what comes in the future. That's what we need to be focused on. Even if all of that means death and regeneration to a way, in a way that we can't possibly imagine, even if it means humans aren't even a part of this of the earth anymore.
Besides compost into the soil that we become.
Yeah, we still should
We'll still be there.
thinking in that way. And we probably spent 2 hours talking about ceremony and all the different ways to think about ceremony and
Yeah, and more that we don't create the ceremony.
it creates us.
It creates us. It's happening.
We tend it, but it makes us.
Yeah, it's like honestly, you know, like how can we create this ceremony? Like,
How
even
can-
if you achieve this, you know, state of super awareness and connectedness, and you know, that usually humbles you more, and and it seems like, you know, the diluted ceremonies that are being put forward these days and are promoted, and you know, it's like a placebo, you know. It's a placebo to feel that emptiness that a lot of people feel because they live, or we live, in this oppressive system. And you know, maybe the powers that be was like, or it just works out this way. They're like, oh, they need this, but you know, they give us the diluted medicine. You know, they don't give us the full of it.
Yeah.
And that's partly also why, you know, Caminante talked about the infantilization of humanity, of people. You know, we stop really becoming adults. And all the media and the movies and the songs, you know, that we sing, and the pop culture mostly, and contemporary art, you know, it's simplifying, you know, reality. It's like making it sweet. It's making it, you know, an illusion, you know, so that we focus on one thing. And, you know, we don't see that full spectrum. And because it takes courage, you know.
Bravery.
Bravery. We need to embrace, you know, the dark side. We need to embrace the deconstruction, the construction, the love, all of it, you know, all that spectrum. And it's hard for people, it's hard for us, it's hard for everyone, you know, in our own paths, in our own hearts, in our own minds, you know,
No matter
to
what,
embrace our complexities,
Yeah.
ourselves to begin with, and then let alone for a family, for a community, for a nation, you know, that's hard. And
But it's grief-stricken that he said something at one point about like this level of truth living is not without its like deep grief or deep, like to live you have to be in that grief, you know, and the reality of it all, you know. And it's hard with the podcast because I feel both like I have this opportunity to host people and have these conversations, and like we can speak about anything we want in the way we want. And yet so much in our world, it feels scary to really say how we truly feel or speak what we feel like is truth. Both. And for me, like coming from a conservative background, but then like also being really at times in a community of like the other end of the spectrum, and often I don't feel like some of the narratives on either end of this contrived, arbitrarily created duality really get at the deeper roots of things. Like right now we're navigating like basically a coup happening in the United States. That's what I feel like I would call it, and yet it's the same thing that's been happening. It's just more dramatic seeming to people, more jarring, more intense, because there's more like cards being thrown up in the air of what we've just accepted as reality, although all these things have been just created for us to exist within. I mean, and in some ways I'm kind of been just like sitting back and observing, and like in some ways it directly affects me as a person socialized as a woman in this culture. Like there's certainly ways that like some of these things will like it change my experience being in this country. But
you're in Mexico now.
no. Or
Today.
maybe I'm an in-betweener forever, you know. But also there's ways that I won't experience what some people experience too, you know. But there's a part of me that's also just like, fine, let it all fall. And I think that's a scary thing to say, because people are very adamantly like, this is unfair, this shouldn't be happening, like this person's bigoted, this is horrible. Yes, and what do we attach? We're attached to what we know is familiar, but what are we really attached to in the system that we live in that's so great anyways? Like, do we need, I don't know, these like, I don't, there's some, and some of it isn't just about like dismantling the government or whatever. Some of it is that. Some of it's just like strategically created hate against all the other otherings that we can create, whether you're brown, trans, woman, whatever it is, in order to distract from the deeper reality of like we're not becoming good soil. Our culture isn't encouraging us to become good soil. Our culture is encouraging us to continue to be blind and accumulate capital that really is just dead, that goes nowhere, and continues to destroy the very earth that could like be feeding us. And that's just like, I don't know. So sometimes I'm like, is that, how do you just say it like that? Like, obviously I don't think anyone should hate anyone. We should all be in it together in community, right, as humans, in relationship to the land. And like there's some unknown that we're afraid of releasing modernity, even if we want something different to be happening. Like there is fear. I see it. Like what would it be like to not have health insurance? Like is a culturally created thing. What would it be like to...
We have no health insurance here.
Really?
We have a saturated health. It's free, but it's saturated.
What does that mean?
Underfunded. A healthcare system that's, it caters for the whole country. And, for us indigenous people, we weren't even part of it until recently because we don't have formal jobs. Usually, we're all self-employed, or like all the farmers, all the campesinos. They weren't part of it. They couldn't get access to that health. I mean, yes, you could, but there were certain specialty and hospitals where you could go to. But I think right now we do have, at least on political speech, a change towards that. But it's also like, like we could depend on the health system to a point, and eventually, we're not gonna escape whatever illness we're suffering from. And, before illness, we would have had a chance to prevent it, for so long. And so the illness is really coming from that, and right. Dale. So yeah, a lot of kind of like the work that's happening now, like I think that Caminante talked about is how do we empower ourselves back, and how do we trace that system that's preying on us, and how do we keep being resilient? How do we escape it? How do we work around it, work with it?
Yeah.
Don't become dependent on it, and in the teachings of Don Juan and the Toltec teachings, they talk about how do you stalk it, how do you turn around it, and then kind of like take advantage of it, and I think that's embracing the path of the warrior, of living a fearless life, of living a selfless life, a life of service, a life in which the sum of all of our little actions add up and creates a better way.
I mean, even when I said like, how do you reckon with, he's mentioned a few times, like, we all will become food for rock women. Like, this is a deity, a spirit, the being that self-actualizes through us, constantly creating, destroying, right? Like, there's one way of naming this being, but that we're all food for and then birthed from. And like, but then how do you know, like, how do you reckon with like when mountains get completely bulldozed for mining, or like how do you grapple with that churning and eating and like consumption of sacredness, and he didn't answer in a direct way necessarily, like, no, is ceremony the way to solve that, or is protest the way to solve that? He's like, I don't walk with shoes a lot of the time. That's the way he responded to that. He's like, my body on this planet right now, I don't wear shoes. And I focused on being what I can control and be offering and reverberate out with other people, And I don't know how to, like... it's interesting.
In a way, it's like, when the task is so daunting, to move that mountain, and you're just that little ant moving that grain of sand. Yeah. And I think that's kind of where he was going, or that's how I perceive it anyway. And, if we just change directions and and live, on the righteous path, or in the path that we know, that we feel in our beings, that's the right thing to do, that's according to, the original instructions for living on the earth, or like the sustainable, regenerative way in which we can figure out how to use our current technology, for the rebalancing of the systems that support life on the earth, to the words that we choose and the way in which we can relate with each other. All those little things, I think the power of ritual ceremony is very strong, because really what are nations, what are our political and economic systems, but a collection of stories that we've chosen to believe and give power to. And that could change literally in a month, in a week, in a day. It takes what the ancient Nahuales in Mexico say, like the power of intent, like the collective intent of a nation to be like, and it usually happens after catastrophic things, like I don't know, like a nuclear war, or like this or that.
Forced upheaval.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then it always happens like, schemed by some other powers. It's very seldom that we realize our own power, as peoples. But a lot of the changes that have happened within these systems, it's because, just common people like us, like wake up one day and they're like, enough bread and circus, we want a healthy soil, we want a peaceful life. Yeah. And our own cities, in our own cultures, we went through all these ups and downs of civilization. Like Mont Alban was buried and abandoned, 900 AD. Like a lot of the ancient cities were, left, abandoned and buried on purpose. So
why
are we willing to abandon our cities? And that's probably what it's going to take, to restart a new way. Like, it's going to take a massive exodus, or a massive change. And what will trigger that, or how or when, probably is not our job, like he was saying, to figure out. Our job is to be ready, to be fearless, to be courageous when the time comes, to make the right choice.
To be responsible of the beauty that you can live in.
What do you call, like, a stone woman? She's doing her work. And he mentioned this myth in the mythology of those beings that also that are more like mineral. I mean, that's how he explained it, right? Like more like insects, like trying to. And I think of that, as the way our technology is evolving, as how like with artificial intelligence and super fast computers and like machines and robots coming to life almost. And there's definitely a take on that, Elon Musk is he's blatantly saying, like, we're gonna colonize Mars as soon as we can. And a lot of money and scientists and entrepreneurs, they're literally aiming for that. They're like, how can we escape this Earth before the next asteroid hits us? They live in fear.
Because it's about the present being right here, consuming without regard for the future.
Yeah, and indigenous people were like, this is our spaceship. Yeah. Have a blast, it's self-healing. You throw a seed and it gives you food and medicine, and a lot of us, like including me, I'm forgetting some of my old ways, I'm forgetting some of those old and ancient ancestral skills. And And how do we balance this? You know, we have trade with tourists and influx of money, and we could have certain commodities.
Mm-hmm.
And we know, you know, we're taxing the earth, you know, we're damaging our mother. But also, like, you know, how do we find that balance, and where, you know, where do we what's the sweet spot? Because it's never ending, you know, like, if the whole world lived like an average US citizen, you know, the statistics will need like 12 planets or something. I think that's more of that personal question for each one of us.
What do you feel like it's going to be like in 50 years in this village?
I don't know. Life is a mystery. Life is a total mystery, and you know, it's easier to understand the prophecies after they've happened, you know. But definitely we have some guidance, and you know what's called like the Mayan prophecies. You know, they exist in Zapotec culture, in Mexica, in all the like 16 nations of Oaxaca, and many other like 68 or 80 in Mexico. Because all the ancient peoples were spiritual. They were all visionaries.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the older cultures were also recording, you know. It's just that our books got burned, you know, during colonization by the Spanish invasion, and the church burnt our books, destroyed our temples, or like stone writings. But some of us survived. And from what little is left, we see records of like, you know, they were measuring the wobbling of the earth, the 26,000 year cycle of the precession of the equinox. And they're like, yeah, when this time comes, there's going to be less rains, less grains, more social unrest, you know. And so they were like, yeah, there will be a time when this river will run dry and ants will make their nests on the river.
Wow.
And last year was one of the first few years that happened. The river was dry for so long. Completely. We also have now a dam. You know, for the last 50 years, we have a dam above the river, so the river doesn't flow freely. But yeah. But
that was in prophecy.
Yeah, it's happening. You know, like.
You said you used to be able to swim. We're looking down from this
balcony. Yeah, well, I was way smaller too.
Yeah, but you could swim
still,
in that right now.
Yes.
It's like little puddles.
Yeah, and things like that, like crop failure. When my grandparents, they had crop failures for sure. Like they had difficult times too. But since 2010, since 2000s, it was more and more common. 2010, more and more. And this year we had a good corn season, but yeah, that's why people are emigrating too.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least the way our agricultural system has evolved, you know, we're plowing the land. You know, we're one of those now that are opening the crust of the earth, and we're paying the price for it.
And coming into last night, I was saying there was no reason to put a plow on the earth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so we got into like an hour probably on like all of that, and like so many stories that came from that all over. But like, where's that line? Sometimes it's pretty distinct. The plow versus the digging stick is pretty darn different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's different. It changes things when you plow the earth. And even here, you're plowing the earth.
Yeah.
Some people.
Well, all of us. Because, you know, since we started to use the bulls to plow the land, you just plow it. It's different also plowing the land with a bull, with a tractor, or with a tent, you know. Yeah. We all have mostly small plots of land. But yeah, all those foothills were terraces. You still see that, you know. Yeah. So it's like very wild over there, all over there. I'm pretty sure, like, because I read a study in the Mixteca, not from our mountains, but in the Mixteca, and all of the pine forests were milpa at some point.
Wow.
The small disturbance. And I know exactly, like, because we release our cows in the mountains, you know, we know where the plots of lands are there too. You know, all of it was worked at some point. Mm-hmm. Was cut down, burned, tended to. Yeah. And, you know.
You took me up there the first couple days we were here, and like you're like, oh, there's pottery shards everywhere, and there's flint knap bits everywhere, and like just look. And we just were like, oh my God,
Every direction.
Yeah, and just that people don't live, that people aren't living up in the lands anymore. Yeah. For different reasons, but yeah, like here there does feel like such a big divide between wild and cultivated. But then it seems like the cows are kind of in between. Where the cows go, it's like they get to go between.
And like here in our community now, hunting is banned so strictly.
Hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, because when the rifles appeared, that changed the dynamics. And also, it wasn't a ritual hunt anymore. It wasn't a connected hunt. We were coming from the Mexican Revolution, like fighting and killing each other and this macho energy, So people, but the deer also evolved. We have stories of the deer and the shamans that take care of them, of how they help the deer. Survive through that, and also molesting hunters that go beyond the line. Like they make the rifles stop working suddenly, and suddenly they see the deer.
Interesting.
What do you understand as a shaman? The deer Nahual come over to them, like, what are you doing, son? So, the spirits are still there in the mountains. And, and like he said, they're hungry for us. They're hungry for us to go there and to talk to them and
that's what I feel.
Tend them and
everywhere I am.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't go, some other being will go and they'll take our space. And it's not like also like we're not totally the peak of life's evolution, because that's how it's presented, right? Like our neocortex is the most amazing thing that evolution has ever created. Like a beast is like reality in UV light, and like it's like the flower in like this other three-dimensional way. So sometimes it feels like living a dream. When we were talking with Caminante, I felt like my body dissolving, and this was just like just another trip that I've had, during sacred plant ceremony.
I think he's like not indigenous to this place. He's like from a group of people in Eastern Europe, Slavic
tribes,
and so
nomad
tribes. So he doesn't belong to one place, and he's just like got a level of wisdom that I feel like grants him very much, like an eldership. I don't even know if he calls himself this, but like in this place that even you were just like, I just think there's something. There's these waves of effect that I'm like, that he's felt from other people too, like he tells stories about, but that I think is really important. And like, he's not like he's not like the granny native elder here whose family's been here 10,000, 20,000 years. He's like, he's a nomad.
He's a nomad. He's a
nomad that's here, and you're just like, it's just something that people saying what needs to be heard,
Well, one story I heard at the caves of Mitla, and this is just a story too, of all the cave tenders there. It was like, there was a woman that came here, and she was like, she could feel the spirit here, and she was like, there's someone buried here, there's a man buried here from the Ice Age, and this man had a dream. He wanted to walk, all around the globe, the earth, and see the world, and he was just walking. And ended up here and really liked it here, and just wanted to live here, in this cave, and he's buried here.
Wow.
And, like humans have been humans, for so long, and we're still doing the same things. And we're explorers, wanderers. That's our nature too.
Do you see yourself living here with your ancestors till you die?
I definitely have my roots here. I
Yeah.
feel really connected to this land, to the community, and my relatives, my family. You know, I care deeply about them. But I'm also a very, very, free, like non-attached person. Like I went for 4.5 years to the UK to study, and I didn't come back once.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
because I was like, well, this money I could spend it, exploring like other countries around here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, people from my village, like they go to the US and they work for 20 years and they can't come back, But
They
when they
can't.
come back, they do, but they never lose touch, there is that
Mhm.
connection beyond physical.
Mm-hmm.
You could be abroad, and that's also very typical of Mexican culture.
Mm-hmm.
And you're proud of your culture, you share it with everyone, and
Mm-hmm.
there is a love for our culture, for the
Mhm.
land, for the
Mhm.
foods that, fed us, for the songs that soothed us,
Mm-hmm.
the dances, that make us merry. So, yeah, I think that's the most beautiful part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're both people who ask a lot of questions about where home is, and there's deep sadness in that, And I meet someone like Camiante who's been a nomad for a long time, and yet it's, what is that too? And it's like, okay, I see this person figuring out how to be in relationship to that and accepting that role of like home is, for some people, ancestrally, home is a lot of places in between, but living in the world we live in, like, it's scary and feels disorienting to be completely without that, like, cushion of people in place
Mm-hmm.
to keep you safe or keep you oriented,
To keep you grounded.
I feel completely disoriented sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I come from a place where my family's been 5 generations on both sides. But I don't feel like I can go back there in the same way you can here,
Well, it takes a lot of work, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it's
It's not
hard
easy.
for you, like, being such a...
It's nice when you're like, just like recording a podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But you
it takes a lot of
you're-
time.
you have
Sacrifice.
expressed, too, being just like an edge walker in a way, like, being of many worlds and not quite fitting in anywhere, too, like us. And it's like, well...
Oh, it's time to play a flute song.
How do we be relationship to that, Well, you guys want to play flute to end this?
Surely.
Or
Yeah,
anything
or-
else you want to say, Michael? You've
Yeah.
been quiet.
I have been a little bit. I've been reflecting and introspective, and I was just thinking about the word juxtaposition has like been coming up for me in this duality of feeling like grounded in a place that you have these roots, but then this, how you described it as free, and how Caminante describes it as nomadic, and how we've experienced as nomadic as well. And I strive for people to feel both, to feel free and to feel grounded in their
Yeah.
place, and
Yeah, that's
have that
great.
balance. I think all of us need it, from here, Mexico, to the US, to Palestine,
Yeah.
to all of these places that are at this forefront of this juxtaposition and change in this world. I hope for that. Grounded in freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Many people, like in Palestine, is still struggling to maintain their ancestral lands.
Yeah.
Tribes in the Amazon, still brutally oppressed and still being tried to be erased and still resistant. Like hundreds of them resisting, like huge corporations, greedy politicians, and and I love that balance. You could be rooted and free, or you could be free, wanderer, and rooted.
Mm-hmm.
I love that phrase. So yeah, great. Well, let's be a little floaty.
I was just thinking one more thing.
Yeah. before.
when we first got here, you're like, Ari, you came here to hang out in the village, but let's go to a nudist festival.
They bailed.
I was like, so here you're like grounded, but you can go be free and come back. What a wonderful dream.
Here I'm conservative. Outside I'm liberal, super like free spirit. Nah, but people. I think that's kind of what youth do. But I have a funny story about that. There was a race for like during Independence Day that they do a race around my village, and I wore these super tight shorts. They were orange though, but and then I was like running on sandals, like minimal sandals, like the Raramuri sandals, and like shirtless. And so I started doing a loop, and then my mom goes to the local like grocery shop, and she hears all these old ladies giggling, and they're like, "Oh, what's happening?" And they're like, "Oh, there is a man running naked in the race."
And your mother just like, oh gosh,
That's
I bet
my
it's so well.
And then I don't know if you hears them, but she's like racing outside to have a peek.
Who is it? And you're like, oh.
Oh, it's my son. Yeah.
Stirring things up here.
Yeah, that
Sometimes.
too. I guess that's my role.
Oh.
Okay, you're invited for the nudist festival in Teotitlán del Valle 2026.
Do you do one here?
July 1st.
Oh my god. Here I'm fully clothed,
bike
and then
ride.
at the beach I'm like half naked.
We did skinny dip.
We
We did skinny dip, and you were like, it's fine. He's like, it's our lands, it's fine. And we're like, are you sure? I was like, does anybody else do this here? You're like, no, just
No.
me and the goat herders. And I'm like, and Caminante's like, no, you really probably shouldn't be doing that. And we're like, well.
It's fine. I was a policeman.
You were the cop. The cop.
Privilege.
I lost all my privilege.
The town cop says we can skinny dip. I don't know. My white
It's funny.
buns.
It's funny.
told Sam to
Maybe
see.
it'll be the topic of the next General Assembly.
No.
This is a great cherry on top of this.
So serious here.
Oh, great.
All right.
All right. Well,
Music.
I guess have to blow the conch, okay?
Okay.
To close the
Close the circle.
Close the circle. Mhm. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for your company.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. What a great,
Thanks for having us.
great experience to share our worldviews, our experiences, your energy. And with that, I'll share my energy. And let it be, whatever it is.